In wrestling, there's so many different eras, and slowly each of them say a goodbye. Competitors, no matter how big or small they may be, win their way into the hearts of millions. Everyone's got their favorite, but without a doubt, two of the greatest to ever do this, regardless of the era, are Triple H and The Undertaker. Those two names speak more volumes than I ever could. After all, these are the two guys who first off defined WrestleMania. The show we know it as today, if we take away their legacy, it's not the same. Their body of work is something special at that event. Secondly, through one way or another, their handprints are all over the WWE, from rivalries to spectacular matches, moments, booking, and of course, inside Hell in a Cell. When you think back to WrestleMania 28, you're probably thinking of Cena and The Rock. This match was so big that it broke all types of buy rate and merch records for the WWE. It was built up for a year. Rock's return was something that WWE fans had been hoping for a long time. So all eyes were on those two. But also on that WrestleMania card was another match with a pretty big tagline. The Hell in a Cell match known as the end of an era. Two of Hell in a Cell's most prolific competitors were gonna end things once and for all. Three sets of people have had trilogies at WrestleMania. Brock and Roman, Austin and Rock, and Undertaker and Triple H. The first time for these two was pretty simple when it came to storyline. There wasn't a crazy deep-rooted story behind things, but by WrestleMania 28, man, this was a different animal. A rivalry so deep-rooted and their third match on the show of shows. One last time, one final love letter to Hell in a Cell, one final love letter to the Attitude Era and its fans, and a story which was simply unforgettable. Let's go back and take a look at the end of an era. Oddly enough, for this one, we don't start in 2012 or 2011, we actually start in the 90s. Meet Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, two huge stars, but two guys who didn't get on the greatest backstage. Shawn Michaels was notorious for backstage antics and politicking to win matches and hold others back. Undertaker was the locker room leader who didn't take kindly to this sort of attitude. The story was that Taker had his fist wrapped up ready to give HBK a few if he didn't do the job to Austin at WrestleMania 14. This was back in 1998 when Stone Cold was about to win the WWE title for the first time in his career and his popularity was sky high. Taker was tired of Shawn's ego. Just a few months prior, the Montreal Screwjob had occurred, so he didn't want to see any BS in this match. And luckily, there wasn't any bullshit. Stone Cold got his moment, Shawn put him over, but there was a divide between these two behind the scenes. A year earlier, these two had competed in the first ever Hell in a Cell match, a match where HBK literally couldn't pull anything. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and as we know it today, that's a structure that's seen its fair share of wars. At the 1998 Royal Rumble, Shawn Michaels took a bump in a casket match against Undertaker, causing him to herniate two discs and crush one completely. Following this and the title being dropped as I mentioned, Shawn Michaels, he left. He was going through a lot in his personal life. He needed to change his ways. He needed to get fit for himself and his family, and he did that. Fast forward to 2002, and Michaels had found God, and he'd also found himself in his second prime. The run Shawn Michaels had was something truly special. He was supposed to come back as a part-timer, but the body and Shawn himself was doing so good that he made one final 8-year run. Matches against Triple H, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, and then his career winded down against, of course, The Undertaker. Taker had built up his WrestleMania streak since WrestleMania 7, and he hadn't been pinned or submitted at that show ever. These two, they didn't see each other in a one-on-one match until 2009, but before that was the 2007 Royal Rumble where these two were the last two standing. They had a great mini match to end the Rumble, with Undertaker winning it and going on to challenge Batista at Mania 23. The following year, the two men who closed the Rumble opened things up at number 1 and number 2. None of them won the match, but the audience were going to be the true winners come a year later, where at WrestleMania 25, Mr. WrestleMania met the final boss of WrestleMania. And the story coming in was Shawn Michaels was completely unfazed. He wasn't scared of The Undertaker's games. In fact, he was the one going to graveyards and playing mind games with them, having a funeral for The Undertaker. Taker, for the first time, was behind the 8 ball. However, when we got to Texas for that match, it legitimately became that match. For half an hour, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels stepped into the squared circle and they made magic together. It started from the entrances, good versus evil, light versus dark. Both these men in their home state, and they pulled everything out. Finishers, near falls, Undertaker hit the iconic dive to the outside, Shawn kicked out of a tombstone, HBK even tried to win by countout, but it wasn't enough. He came up short, he couldn't pull out the win, and Taker was now 17-0. The performance was heralded by many, and people were in awe of what they just saw. Rave reviews, critical acclaim, but in Michaels' mind, it consumed him. He just couldn't let the loss go. He came so close, but in the record books, it doesn't show close. It only shows W's and L's. Fast forward to the Slammy Awards of that same year, HBK and Undertaker wins the match of the year, and you see that loss hasn't sat well with Shawn. Even though half a year has passed, he comes up, he accepts the trophy, and then he stops. He looks at the trophy almost like it's a symbol of losing, turns back, and he tells Undertaker that, "I know I can beat you." He challenges Undertaker to a rematch, which Taker goes, "Nope, not gonna happen." Shawn Michaels then declared for the Royal Rumble, thinking if not straight up, I'll just win my chance to fight him. He was consumed of this idea that he had to beat Taker because he came so close. But at the Royal Rumble, he made it to the Final Four and he was eliminated. That deep-rooted feeling of Shawn, you could tell by his emotion. He was consumed by this. He was begging to be let back into the match. It was like his life depended on it. The disappointment was written in his face. He beat up referees and he was going to get this match one way or another. Fast forward to the next pay-per-view, the Elimination Chamber. Here, the World Heavyweight Champion Undertaker is defending his title. It was down to 2. One more and the Undertaker was headed to WrestleMania 26 as the World Heavyweight Champion. But from underneath the chamber emerged Shawn Michaels. Sweet chin music to the face, and he cost Undertaker the title and the match. He was consumed by this so much that he was willing to go to the depths of hell to get this. He was hell-bent on going back to hell with Taker, so everything was made official between the two. Shawn was gonna get his match, he wanted to live forever, but Taker didn't want Michaels' career to continue. There was one condition: if Shawn Michaels lost, Mr. WrestleMania would be no more. It would be over. The legacy would die and the Heartbreak Kid's heart would be broken because he would have to retire. No loopholes. Shawn wins, streak dies. Taker wins, Shawn's career dies. Shawn accepted this knowing that there was no other way. WrestleMania 26 came and these two were the main event. HBK, Undertaker, one more time. They again pulled everything out of the bag. Callbacks to last year, but this time each man had each other scouted much better. Tombstones, moonsaults from the top rope onto the announce table, sweet chin music, Hell's Gate, you name it. Shawn's gone through hell just like Taker. He goes for sweet chin music. Undertaker gets out of the way. Tombstone, 1, 2, and Shawn kicks out. Michaels kicked out and Taker had Shawn dead to rights. Shawn looks up at Taker and he does the throat slash in defiance, saying, "Not today." Taker gets him up, one last tombstone, and the nail in the coffin of Shawn Michaels' legendary career. For Shawn, it was over. 18-0 was the Undertaker. The streak lived on. But it was goodbye. One of the best performers, maybe the best performer in WWE history, would now have to retire. He'd leave this business behind, and what an amazing way to put a stamp on his career. The next night he retired and Triple H, his best friend, came behind him, gave him a hug, and the Heartbreak Kid had left the building. The relationship between Shawn Michaels and Triple H is a dynamic which dated back to the 90s. The two became close friends and backstage had many instances of holding others back and going on a power trip. Both of them formed D-Generation X together, one of the most rambunctious, loud, fun, and no F's given groups in the WWE. But as great of friends they were backstage, they were even better rivals on TV. Whether it was a whodunit, a last man standing match, or even a simple segment, every time these two were in a ring together, you knew you were going to get something special. After Undertaker retired Shawn Michaels, he had a brief rivalry with Kane and then he left. But in February of 2011, he made his return just in time for WrestleMania season. Who was Taker going to defend the streak against this year? Taker came back, and before he could even say a word, he was interrupted by Triple H, and they didn't need to talk. The silence spoke volumes. The WrestleMania sign in the back, it was obvious where this was headed. Both guys look at the sign, and it's on. A few weeks later, these two met again and Shawn Michaels came out. Triple H talked about how years ago Shawn and him made a deal that if either of them couldn't go in the ring anymore, they'd tell each other. But he was going to extend this deal to The Undertaker. Undertaker just couldn't go anymore. Undertaker then told HBK that he humbled him, he retired him, and then Triple H says, "Shawn, tell him why I'm gonna end the streak this Sunday." But he doesn't. Shawn Michaels gets out of the ring and he's like, "You can't win." Shawn knows that if I couldn't do it, Triple H probably can't do it. WrestleMania 27 by any stretch of the imagination was not a good show. One of the worst WrestleManias and wrestling shows you'll ever see. From Raw main events to commentators competing to Snooki for some reason. But the no holds barred match between Triple H and Undertaker was brutal. It's sometimes forgotten for how violent it was because it gets lumped in with the WrestleMania 27 name itself. After a war between these two where both men tore each other to shreds, went into desperation mode multiple times, Undertaker took the win. But did he really win? He got carted out of the arena, he didn't look like himself, he couldn't even get up for the pyro celebration. The streak was alive and well, but Undertaker, he didn't look like he was. On the Last Ride documentary, Taker said that he spent 2 full days in his hotel room recovering from this match because the bumps and vicious nature of this match affected him that much. The match at Mania and Taker not leaving under his own power was something WWE used to bridge into the next year's show. Taker disappeared after this match. Meanwhile, Triple H had a new on-screen role as COO. Taker returned the following year to confront Triple H. They did it just like they did it the first time. Both guys looked at the Mania sign, but this time Triple H just pats Taker on the shoulder like, "Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it." Triple H said that out of respect for The Undertaker, he wasn't going to face him at Mania again. He said that when he looked at Taker, he didn't get butterflies in his stomach anymore. This wasn't the same dude. He's about to leave, but at that moment, the lights went black and a video played on the Titantron. It was Undertaker watching a projection of last year's Mania match. Taker said that this wasn't going to be the last image of him at WrestleMania. The next week, guess who was back? One of the GOATs himself, Shawn Michaels. Triple H comes out and Shawn asks him, like, this is all a play, right? Like, there's no way you're not going to take the match with Taker. There's no way you're going to pass up an opportunity to end the Undertaker streak. And then Triple H is just like, no, like, I'm actually not taking the match. I have responsibilities. And he said that this match won't happen, saying that Taker won the battle, but he won the war. In the end, who walked out? It was Triple H. Taker was carted off. Shawn reminded Triple H what he was supposed to be: the ass kicker, the cerebral assassin, the mean green Katie Vick machine. Shawn tells Triple H that maybe marrying a McMahon made him into one. Shawn basically calls Triple H a pushover. Triple H then said that his responsibility in this new role was the future of the WWE. He was saying that he saw Undertaker as a brand to the WWE and he couldn't be the one who ended it. He knows he could, but he won't. Undertaker in WrestleMania, that's iconic at that point. Having someone beat the streak, you're losing half of WrestleMania. Triple H said that Taker, Shawn, and himself were the end of an era. The last group of guys who would pay the ultimate price without question, and that he didn't want to be the one to end the era. So the branding was born for this match. And then he told him that he wasn't going to end Undertaker for Shawn because Shawn couldn't get the job done. Because keep in mind, who retired him? Exactly. Lights go out and again a video plays. Taker asking Triple H to give him what he wants. We see The Undertaker cutting his hair and playing back WrestleMania like a menace. This time it's Undertaker. Remember how this loss consumed Shawn Michaels? Well, now it's consuming The Undertaker. The roles are reversed. Taker told us next week that he's been reliving the beating from the previous year's Mania every single day. Triple H then came out and he said that it's bad for business if Taker's legacy doesn't continue. Undertaker wants Triple H to end his career. If he can actually do it, then take the match. Here's where Undertaker does something that you never do in the WWE. He used the C word. He calls him a coward. And we all know how Triple H responds when he gets called a coward. Undertaker then plays the friend card. Triple H knows that he can't do what Shawn couldn't because deep down, Triple H knows that Shawn Michaels was always better than him. That hit a nerve with Triple H, and Triple H accepted the match. He agrees to the match, but under one condition: that this rivalry, this era, and the streak will end, but it has to end inside Hell in a Cell. HBK came back 2 weeks later and him and Triple H were in the ring and he asked for the footage to be replayed. And Shawn found it pretty interesting that the worst thing someone could say to make Triple H do something that he didn't want to do was that Shawn Michaels was better than him. Remember, these two had a blood feud. They were the best of friends, but even better enemies. Last man standing, no DQ matches. These guys did everything under the sun to each other. but they were always together one way or another. So the deeper rooted story here is that Triple H still doesn't feel like Shawn is better than him. Every time he hears that, it bugs him, and he'll put everything aside to do what he doesn't want to do. Triple H then said that it had nothing to do with that. He was tired of people saying that HBK couldn't get the job done, that HBK was a failure. He wasn't a failure. According to Triple H, Shawn Michaels was the greatest in-ring performer of all time. It pained him that people looked at HBK as a loser. Why? Because of The Undertaker. So he wanted to finish it at WrestleMania for both Shawn and himself. Shawn then announced that he was going to be the special guest referee at WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels then came back with a replay and he's like, I've been walking around backstage and no one's called me a loser, that he's seen a lot of people backstage, but the only person he hasn't seen is The Undertaker. He called out Taker and Shawn asked him, if you think I'm a failure or loser, say it to my face. And then Undertaker tells Shawn to think about what he's saying. Think about who Shawn Michaels is. Does he really think these things, or is he just insecure? Insecure about how Undertaker ended the legend of HBK. And then Shawn's like, yo, you're the one who begged for this match. Shawn reminded Undertaker that he was the guest referee. Taker said that if HBK stuck his nose in the finish, if the outcome wasn't pure, that there would be hell to pay. And then he told him that, isn't it ironic that the guy whose career was ended by The Undertaker could be the same one who counts his shoulders to the mat? Shawn Michaels could still be the one who ends the streak at WrestleMania. Shawn came out the next week and he says that he holds the end of an era in his hands. He said that end of an era really means the end of the streak. Triple H comes out and he told The Undertaker that you need to stop worrying about Shawn. They hype up that they've been in the most Hell in a Cell matches combined, that Triple H excels inside Hell in a Cell. Triple H says that he knows exactly what it takes to win inside Hell in a Cell. And then Undertaker's like, are you sure? Do you really have what it takes? He basically signals that he's not what he was last year. He tells him that it's going to be your wife, your kids, your career, your mind, your soul, even your life. Are you willing to put it all on the line? And Triple H says, yeah, I'm game. Literally, the game. He says that he's going to end Taker, and they both get the satisfaction from each other that, alright, they're not going to spare any punches. We're going to get the best from both guys, and they're both satisfied with each other. Right as Taker is about to leave the ring, he comes back. He looks at Triple H and he's like, remember when I said that Shawn is better than you? He is. It was now time for the match. April Fool's Day 2012. Was Shawn gonna make a fool of The Undertaker, or was Undertaker gonna punk out DX? You had so much riding on this match. You had a referee who you weren't too sure on his intentions. You had Undertaker who had this loss consuming him for a year. Triple H who didn't want to dig down to make the world see Undertaker as immortal again and end his mystique. Good old JR on commentary, Michaels, Triple H, and Undertaker all make their entrance. Taker's got a new haircut, the long hair is gone, but the question is, would the streak be gone too? Triple H and Undertaker, they lock eyes and they stare a hole into each other. The cell slowly comes down as fog surrounds the ring and the Memory Remains by Metallica plays. On commentary, they tell us that there's one person left to enter this match, and that's the Hell in a Cell, who's arguably the most barbaric and unforgiving person in here. It lowers, the bell rings, and it's time. Both guys start with heavy shots and they lay into one another. The pace of the match is so quick that there's no big feel out process. You'd think that there would be one since this was a long one, but there wasn't. The brawl spills to the outside and Undertaker has full control of the match, throwing Triple H everywhere you can imagine. Ring steps, back body drop, into the cage, leg drop. Triple H eats a beating early on, and then the tide turns. It was Triple H's turn to get the offense in. He uses the steel steps Taker brought into the ring to inflict damage on him before the tide shifts again. Triple H grabs a chair and he just goes to town on Undertaker's back. Shot after shot after shot and no remorse shown. And for the first time in the match, Shawn Michaels plays a part. He tells Triple H that it's too much. He tells him to stop hurting the guy, showing that even though this is the guy who ended his career, he has respect for him. Triple H says, "You want it done, end it." And Shawn just says, cover him to end it. Shawn knows it, Triple H knows it, that Taker just will not quit. Undertaker is taking a beating and Shawn's like, I gotta stop it. And Taker's like, no, do not stop the match. Shawn continues to beg Taker like, man, if I don't end it, he's gonna end you. Meanwhile, Triple H is like, end it, Shawn, or else I will. And then the sledgehammer returns, shot right to Taker's head, but that's not it. Then this psycho Triple H decides he's gonna go full golf club lumberjack hockey stick chop on Undertaker's head. He's got it positioned, he's about to swing, but on the backswing, Michaels stops the sledgehammer. He knows his best friend will do anything and that he might end Taker once and for all. As Shawn is conflicted whether to end it or not, HBK gets caught in the Hell's Gate. He gets out of it, but he's knocked out cold. Undertaker then puts Triple H into the Hell's Gate and all three men are out. Charles Robinson comes out, chokeslam to Triple H, 1, 2. That's not enough to keep Triple H down. Shawn Michaels is now getting up. Taker is going for a tombstone on Triple H. He reverses out of it. Shawn hits a sweet chin music, transitioned right into a pedigree, and then maybe the greatest near fall in the history of Mania, and one of the best in WWE history for sure. The count, the 1, the 2, and Taker barely kicks out. Taker would not say die, nor would he die. I mean, he's already dead. Triple H shoves Michaels out of the ring, and he's so annoyed that at every point when he's about to win, he just keeps getting in his business. Taker hits a tombstone, and that's it. Only it's not. Shawn Michaels makes the count, but Triple H kicks out. Both of them trade blows back and forth. The crowd is hanging on every shot. A pedigree doesn't do it. Undertaker then goes to town on Triple H with a steel chair. All while Shawn Michaels is conflicted. It's like the pain of his friend is also affecting his body. So Triple H has taken a beating from The Undertaker. He's gasping for air, he's in pain, he's bruised, he's battered, he's unable to get up, but he won't say die. He gets up, hits a crotch chop in defiance. Taker hits him with his own sledgehammer. All the while, Shawn Michaels has his back turned to the play. He can't watch, he just doesn't know what to do. One final throat slash from Taker, one final tombstone, one final cover, and for the first time in this match, Shawn Michaels' hand hits for 3. It was over. Undertaker had won and the era had came to an end. One final love letter to the Attitude Era, to the guys aside from these two who helped shape it. That was it. Undertaker was 20-0. Taker had avenged the previous year and Michaels had done the right thing despite him being torn between revenge for himself or the right thing to do. All three men stood at the top of the ramp, and according to Triple H, this was unplanned. They all shared a hug, and it was a beautiful moment. It kind of signaled that no matter the real beef they may have had, no matter if they didn't get along, no matter if they couldn't care less about each other, that at the end of the day, they all knew their place in history. They knew what they were fighting for, and they knew what they were representing. Taker and HBK started off Hell in a Cell. Triple H and Undertaker defined it. This was a story that came together so perfectly, and through the genius of all three men, they told this story over a 4-year period. Taker's streak was a spectacle within a spectacle, and from Mania 23 to Mania 29, Taker had the best matches on WrestleMania. The storytelling was something to marvel at. This one rewarded you for watching. It showed a juxtaposition of two different characters twice. First, it was Shawn Michaels, who had vengeance on his mind, and then Taker denied him. This time, the roles were reversed. Undertaker wanted his vengeance because he couldn't shake off what had happened to him. All three guys played their part to a T. And this was truly the end of an era. As we know, just a few years later, the streak would come to an end, and now Triple H's career is behind him as well. But thankfully, they were able to give it one final goodbye, the way that they wanted to do it. The era may be over, but the memory remains. Take care, guys.